G'day, this is PJ from A Wasteland Story, and you're listening to Tale of the Manticore.
The following podcast is intended for a mature audience. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Tale of the Manticore, Season 3. Like the creature from which it takes its name, Tale of the Manticore is a mashup, a crossbreeding between two different species of storytelling. Here you will find the unpredictability of old-school paper and dice games with the storycraft of a dark fantasy novel. No character is sacred, and none will be spared if the dice decide their fate is at hand. According to lore, the tail of a manticore is barbed with cruel iron spikes. There will be much pain in the days ahead. Last time on Tale of the Manticore. The last chapter begins in the aftermath of the battle with the direwolves, when the two surviving blink dogs abruptly vanish. When they're gone, Durrani levels a harsh reprimand at Achillia for having rushed into battle and almost costing Tentir his life. The half-elf shows her wisdom and self-control when she admits her fault and apologizes. Her words seem to smooth over the tense situation, and the companion's journey north continues all that evening and into the next day without further incident. But then another difficult conversation comes up, once again initiated by Durrani. He asks Fairwind to use his divine magic to heal Tentir. The cleric agrees to do it, but warns the party that they will lose some of their food supply. He cannot heal Tentir and purify the wolf meat they took from their fallen enemies. It is one or the other. The decision is made, and on the next day, Fairwind heals some of Tentir's wounds through prayer. Food is now a growing concern once again. The episode ends with a flashback describing the elf maiden Eulaloon's very unfortunate encounter with a group of sprites. When she accidentally trespasses in their land, they threaten her with curses. Things get worse when Eulaloon accidentally kills their leader and then succumbs to the other fairies' drug-tipped spears. Between the lines. There was something I wanted to put in the last episode, but I just couldn't find the right place for it. Since past seasons of the show have run to 76 episodes, I figured that this season is about 1/3 of the way through. I think it might be a good time to step back, have a look at the chessboard, and see where all the pieces are currently placed. Actually, a chessboard is the wrong metaphor. This season's story is more like a chain. It's far more episodic in nature than the previous two seasons. This is by design, as I wanted to try my hand at something in the picaresque tradition, like Huckleberry Finn or the Odyssey or even The Hobbit. This go-around, I find myself connecting scenes with and then far more than and so. The style comes with some challenges though. Weaving the threads of a story is tougher to do when they are tied together end to end. Perhaps it would help if I laid out all the strands so they could be closely examined. Thread number 1 is the puzzle of Aldve being robbed, poisoned, and turned to stone. Why did he scratch the name Odok into his dirt floor? We now know that Odok Zygog is a famous historian and a recluse, but mostly he is still a mystery. The PCs are scheduled to arrive in his neck of the woods on day 30. Thread number 2 is the weird iron tower and its two occupants, Fimgrim Atresh and Velario the Gnome. What do they want, and what are they looking for? We know Fimgrim has never heard of Aldve before, and we know the tower reappears later on during Achillia's journey. That's about it. Thread number 3 is the orc shaman, Otot the Dream Shaper. Otot is an interesting NPC, and one I'd like to see more of, but that's unlikely unless the PCs re-enter Black Cloud territory. It occurs to me that the defeat of Mombi would have upset the balance of power in that region. With the ogre out of the picture, the stalemate between the Black Cloud and Bloodfoot orcs may well be destabilized. Thread 4 is the pair of rescued blink dogs. Thread 5 is Eulaloon, the elven warrior from the end of the previous episode. And I think that's all the active storylines accounted for. I didn't include anything about the Curse of Murok because in my mind, that thread is more or less complete. At this time, it is perhaps worth a quick snapshot of the companions, what's on their mind, and what's in their inventory. Achillia is going through an identity crisis. How come she is so unlike these other elves? Of course, we know that she is a half-elf, and that Aldve is her father, but we don't know why he never told her. It's worth a reminder that Achillea still carries the Infinity Milk Cap mushroom and the potion of gaseous form, in addition to her new wand. Cord is growing both literally and figuratively. His relationship with Achillea is unshakable, and his connection with Robin is evolving. Dureni is a serious-minded elf who follows Achillea, but not out of a sense of obligation. He's very concerned about his younger brother's well-being and does feel a duty to protect him. Tentir is joyful, reckless, and very un-elf-like in that he wants to stand out from the crowd. He seeks adventure and feels a need to prove himself. He's been through a few things lately that might temper his personality, however. Tentir wields the Sword of Lirhain. Finally, Brother Fairwind is a cleric who hopes to achieve redemption for past failures through acts of selflessness. He also aspires to one day lift the curse of Morok. I hope that little review was useful. I know I find it helpful to step back and look at the big picture now and then. But that's enough meta talk. It's high time to get into the narrative. Chapter 27, Part 1. Day 22. Morning. Mythic event meaning. Imitate. Masses. Party status. Achillea. 9 out of 9 hit points. Cord. 14 out of 14. Dureni. 12 out of 12. Tentir. 11 out of 15 after receiving 1 point of natural healing, and 4 points from Fairwind's Cure Light Wounds prayer. Fairwind. 16 out of 18 after receiving 1 point of natural healing. Supplies. The companions have 0 portions of food and 8 portions of water remaining. Spells available. Achillea can cast Shrink ×2 and Glitter Dust. Cord can cast Entangle and Slow Poison. Fairwind released Tentir's hands and regarded his work. The elf's deeper cuts looked better, and most of the lighter ones had disappeared completely.
Eskeri Kaska,
said Tentir, feeling better.
So it all favors you,
was Fairwind's reply. Tentir stretched, testing his newly healed body. Out of curiosity, and using Achillea as a translator, he asked Fairwind what the life of a priest entailed. The cleric provided details while they were breaking camp, listing study, labor, proselytizing, and prayer, among other duties. Tentir commented that the life of a cleric sounded hard, which caused Fairwind to reply through Achillea.
Tell him it is hard, but everything in life is hard. We choose our hard.
Since they'd consumed the last of the hickory nuts to break their fast, there was nothing to eat when they took their first break of the day's march at around noon. They were following the eastern edge of the dense and thorny woods and could now see where it ended and gave way to grassy hills about a half-mile ahead. As they were preparing to continue their march, Dureni noticed a certain type of shrub just inside the woods. He pushed aside a bit of the cockspur and touched one of the light green oval-shaped leaves.
These are bilberry shrubs, but the fruit is all gone.
That's a shame.
Achillea had returned. Both Dureni and Tentir had cast her "Are you serious?" looks at this, as Dureni explained.
It's spore. Black grouse are very fond of bilberries.
In unison, the brothers unslung their bows and knocked arrows.
You stay here. We'll go on ahead.
I hope it's true what you told me before, Dureni.
Said Achillea.
What did I tell you before?
That hunger sharpens the eye. If you find something, don't miss.
We won't,
said the elder brother. And then the 2 hunters stalked off. "30 minutes later, they returned into view. Dureni and Tentir were walking side by side, which was rare to see. Dureni was holding a large, dark shape in his left hand, and the siblings were laughing and talking. Tentir waved and made a face, pointing at their prize. When they were close, Achillea could make out the dark plumage and bright red wattles of a black grouse. It was a big one, too.
Oh, thank Ahea,
she said, smiling broadly. Then, turning to Fairwind, she added,
We are going to eat well today.
In the last episode, I rolled for a wandering encounter and determined there would be one. but I held off on describing the result because I rolled a 1 on my new table, indicating an encounter with large game, a black grouse, it turned out. Then I rolled for surprise and determined that the bird would be surprised, but not the party. At the time, I figured that a hunting scene would not be a very compelling way to end an episode, and so instead came up with the Ulaloon story. Anyway, to handle the wandering encounter, I briefly considered making Dureni and Tentir roll to hit the bird, but given they'd won surprise, and Dureni is a seasoned hunter, I just gave them the kill. I'll say that, when cooked, this bird will provide 8 portions of food if Fairwind uses his divine magic to preserve it, or 4 if he doesn't. So that brings back the choice between healing Tentir further or making their food supplies last longer. This time around, the party will choose the latter. And that brings us to hex rolls for day 23. Let's begin. For weather. An 18 is another perfect day for travel, cool and dry. Next up is stumble upon. A 6 means nothing special is discovered. For foraging, using Cord's help. A 3 is a success. The PCs discover a nest with 4 decent-sized eggs. I'll make a note of this on their food supply tracker. Finally, there's a chance for another wandering encounter. A 4 means there is none. The next day, day 24, brings the PCs within 1 week of their destination. Let's see how they get on. For weather. A 6 means the cool and dry is replaced with hot and humid, but it's nothing too severe. Stumble upon. A 5, no result. For foraging, I'm going to try something new. Since water is getting low, I'm going to see if Cord can find a water source by using his magic to locate a fish. His success or failure will determine if a lake or river is there or not. So, and this is kind of cool, I'm building the map based on Cord's roll. A 1 to 3 on a d6 is needed to succeed. The roll. A 5 means there is no river or lake nearby. That's too bad. But that's the will of the dice gods. Okay, almost done, but I still need to roll for a wandering encounter. I got a 5. Yep, that's a bingo. Like last time, I'm putting this encounter together off mic. Unlike last time, I won't make you wait for the result. Chapter 27. Part 2. Day 24. 1 week from their destination. Late afternoon. Mythic event meaning. Imitate masses. Party status. Achillea. 9 out of 9 hit points. Cord. 14 of 14. Dureni. 12 of 12. Tentir. 13 of 15 after receiving 2 points of natural healing. Fairwind. 18 of 18 after receiving 2 points of natural healing. Supplies. The companions have 4 portions of food and no water remaining. Spells available. Achillea can cast Shrink ×2 and Glitter Dust. Cord can cast Entangle and Slow Poison. Fairwind had plucked the bird and Achillea had made the fire. Dry fuel was plentiful where they'd been, near the north end of the dense wood. Then, they'd skewered pieces of meat to dagger-sharpened sticks and cooked them. The companions had wanted badly to give themselves a feast, but prudence prevailed and most of the meat was wrapped up to be carried with them. That had been yesterday, and, by virtue of Fairwind's blessing, the meat was still good to eat today. The Cockspur Woods was now some 20 miles behind them, and the party was passing through more hilly terrain, spotted with boulders and terraced by natural rock ledges. Eventually, they came within view of another forest. This one was of mixed spruce, jack pine, birch, and maple. It was much too large to circumnavigate, and, since the elves felt more comfortable under a green canopy than a blue one, they entered. The temperature immediately dropped by several degrees, and the strong smell of the conifers made the companions feel refreshed. The forest interior was beautiful to look upon, for the rays of the sun pierced the bower and dappled everything in moving patches of olive and gold. They stopped for a break after they were a half-mile in.
That's the last of it,
said Fairwind, giving his water skin a little shake.
Mine too.
Sighed Achillea. In fact, every one of them had drained their skins to the last drop.
Come on,
said Dureni.
we can make another 4 miles before we need to stop.
As the sun had passed its zenith several hours earlier, it was an optimistic guess. Still, there was no reason to tarry, and the companions took up their new marching order, with Durrani in the lead, followed by Tentir, Cord, and Robin, who nowadays were inseparable, and then Achillea and Fairwind. As they walked, what the companions didn't know was that they were being observed. As it happened, they were being watched by two sets of eyes, one moss green and the other ice blue. But neither of the observers was aware of the other. Tall maple trees stretched high, with their leaves hissing gently in the soft breeze. Among them, the delicate birch trees stood out, contrasting against the darker tones of the forest with their stark white bark. The ground, covered in a carpet of rich green ferns and scattered pine needles, was springy underfoot. Grackles called to each other from the treetops, making Robin twitch nervously. It had only been a half hour since the last break when Durrani called a halt. Ahead was a clearing with a fallen log laying across it. Little scallop-shaped fungi clung to the underside, but laying atop it, as though meant to be found, was a broken arrow. Durrani turned to the others, pointing it out and saying,
Etva faram nerenkin.
Achillea translated for Fairwind and Cord.
He says it's a friendship marker.
Durrani told Tentir to stay behind, while he stepped out alone into the clearing. With his bow slung across his shoulder and his sword sheathed, he held his empty palms out to the forest.
Odo astara faram,
he said, projecting his voice. Lifting up the two pieces of the broken arrow, one in each hand, he turned slowly this way and that. For a few moments, the only reply was the whisper of the trees. Then, a slender figure, about Durrani's height, stepped out from behind a maple on the far side of the clearing. While elves tended towards androgyny, most of the companions could discern that the stranger was a male. Like Durrani, he had long, wild dark hair and dark eyes, but he seemed a little older and had a broad, splay-featured face. He wore a jerkin and leggings of deerskin and carried a short spear. A leather baldric held a brace of daggers on his left shoulder.
"What tribe do you hail from?"
he asked. His tone was neither hostile nor friendly.
We are from the Setevi Marsh tribe, some 80 miles to the south,
was the reply.
My name is Durrani.
"You are far from home, Durrani,"
commented the other.
"I represent the Nuvar wood tribe. Do you search for us?"
No, we were not looking for you.
"Then where are you going?"
Durrani stood to one side and indicated the party assembled behind him.
These are my companions, Tentir, Achillea, Cord, and Fairwind. We are looking for a human wizard, a recluse by the name of Odok Zygog. Do you know of him?
The other shook his head.
"The name is not familiar to me."
Somewhat incredibly, the sight of Fairwind and Cord neither seemed to surprise or concern him at all.
"These are all the members of your party?"
Durrani said they were.
"I have with me 24 elves, hidden nearby in the woods."
Once again, there was no threat in his voice, though the word certainly implied a warning.
"My name is Kalin. Bring the rest of your group forward, Durrani, and we shall sit and talk."
At the last wandering encounter roll, I rolled a 3, which on my new table meant humanoids. I then rolled a 6 on the subtable, indicating demi-humans. I chose elves by DM Fiat and rolled a d10 to determine their number. I got a 7. The 24 Kalin mentions is a bluff, an idea prompted by the current event meaning, imitate masses. Next, I rolled for surprise and determined that neither side would be, and finally, made a reaction check on 2d6. This would be critical in understanding the nature of the encounter itself. Since Durrani was in the lead, I allowed his +1 charisma bonus and another +1 because the group was overheard speaking Elvish. But I applied a -1 penalty for the party having such a strange mix of people. The rolled result was an 11 after bonuses. Now that's very positive and just shy of overt friendliness. The rules suggest the following adjectives and verbs: interested, curious, approach, ask questions, favorable. With all this in mind, I came up with the broken arrow scenario you've just heard. There will probably need to be more rules as we negotiate this meeting further, but to begin, I'll quickly get a new event meaning since the old one is fulfilled. Okay, here's 2 rolls on D100. I've got 97 and 69. Let's see, that's transform, wounds. Well, nothing comes to mind, but I'll figure it out. Achillea tried not to think about the 24 archers hidden in the woods around them. The situation felt similar to the one she'd faced in the ambush after meeting Edo. It was, in one regard, many times worse, but then again, significantly, this Khalin did not seem intent on killing them. If that changed, with 6 arrows trained on each of them, the elf could have them all executed with a word. She was brought out of this train of thought when Khalin spoke again, and something astonishing happened.
Zatopi, I think it's safe for you to show yourself,
he said. With that, a female elf stepped into the clearing as though through a fold in space, throwing open her cape with a flourish as she came. When Achillea recovered from the initial shock, she realized that the elf had been with them in the clearing the whole time, and she had not been invisible, not quite. Her cloak was woven with highly realistic patterns of fern and leaf and branch, which, while she was unmoving, had camouflaged her perfectly.
This is my sister, Zatopi,
said Khalin, repeating her name.
Well met,
she said in a silken voice while bowing.
If it weren't for her,
continued Khalin,
we wouldn't have arranged this meeting. She was scouting when she came across your party and overheard you speaking Elvish. Ironically, it is the human among you she's most curious about. Humans have always fascinated her. He is one of the Dorothi, I presume.
I do not think he belongs to any group, as when we found him he was solitary,
replied Dureni.
But Achillea here, who speaks the tongue of men, can ask him, if you please.
Ask if he comes from Doroth,
said Zatopi, eyeing Achillea with naked suspicion.
And if he does not, which land he calls home.
Achillea put the question to Fairwind, who looked both perplexed and anxious. At least he didn't know about the 24 archers in the woods. As she asked, something in the back of her mind told her that she had heard the place named Doroth before, but the memory was just out of reach.
You can tell her that I have never heard of Doroth, and that I originally hail from Camertine, far to the west.
It was when Achillea heard Fairwind say the name that she suddenly remembered where she had heard it before. Thank you for listening to Tale of the Manticore. If you would like to support the show, there are lots of ways to help. You can recommend it online or to friends. You can like and repost episode announcements on social media. You can pick up one of my offerings on DriveThruRPG, for example, my new One Shot in the Dark expansion module in MakerKit. You can buy a Tale of the Manticore t-shirt at www.beararts.store, and in fact there is a new design now available in response to listener requests to have one without all the blood. And finally, you can rate or review the show on your podcatcher of choice. I'm extremely grateful for your support. At this point, I'd like to share one of your great online reviews. This one was left by Azran68 on Apple Podcasts. Azran68 writes, "This podcast overcame a bad reaction roll and turned me into a devout follower. Let me explain. I usually prefer high fantasy and truly heroic characters, so I was a bit reticent to try the podcast. Thankfully, it was strongly recommended to me, and I gave it a shot. Turns out I like a darker tone much more than I thought. Tale of the Manticore sucked me into its world like only Worlds Beyond Numbers managed before. The 30 minutes format is ideal for me, and the balance between gaming and audio drama is perfect. And I never thought I would develop an interest for OSR gaming, but I'm now starting to see the appeal. I just caught up on Season 3. Now I must go back to the previous seasons. Thanks so much, Azran68. Your review is truly appreciated. It's a testament to the power of word of mouth that you heard about the show and gave it a shot, despite the genre being outside your usual preferences. I'm so glad you did, and delighted that you got drawn into the world of Marith. I'm also curious to know if you ever got into OSR gaming. I hope so. Appreciation is also due to my amazing cast of actors. The core cast is all here in this episode. Kyellen, Kevin Berenger, and David Cooper play Dureni, Tentir, and Fairwind, respectively. There's also 2 newcomers to introduce. Many listeners will be familiar with Moses Boyajian, the creator of the popular Willona's Cave YouTube channel, and publisher of various TTRPGs and supplements. Moses plays the elf scout, Khalin. Clint's sister, Zatopi, is brought to life by Morg Stromer of Cryptic Creations. Thanks to you both, Moses and Morg. For those curious to learn a little bit more about Tale of the Manticore, I keep a blog where I post all kinds of show and RPG-related stuff, like art, maps, tables, crafts, and show notes. You can find it at taleofthemanticore.blogspot.com. To get in touch with me, I'm at manticoretale.bluesky.social, Tale of the Manticore Podcast on Instagram, or taleofthemanticore@gmail.com. SoloRolePlayersNetwork.com is now live too, and I'd love to invite you to check it out when you get a few spare minutes. There are lots of great solo creators there for you to discover, and in fact, we've added even more creators since launching in May. The adventure will continue on the next episode of Tale of the Manticore, the story where chaos rolls.